ton of new learnings that we're picking up here from looking at actual Python code and understanding what BERT is doing within Google and the ChatGPT world, or competitor, if you will. And then obviously hearing from Bill Taranto, the chair of the Breakthrough Alliance, and hearing all the good things that Eric is doing from Generable, and how data science is being used in clinical trials with Eric's model and what he's doing at Generable. So, you know, again, the idea here is, as we talked about Breakthrough Alliance with, again, the president of the Merck Global Fund, Bill Taranto, one of the winners from a recent Breakthrough Alliance challenge was Deliberate.AI. And here from the Deliberate.AI company is Marc Aafjes, and he's going to walk through a presentation on how Deliberate.AI is radically changing healthcare and what they're doing. And again, another wonderful data science presentation. Marc, thank you for joining the program today and handing the virtual microphone to you.
Thank you, Stan. Appreciate the invite, and amazing to be here talking about such an important topic. So I prepared kind of a bit of a presentation as well. I'll give a quick summary of what we're focusing on with Deliberate.AI, and then I'll raise 3 points that I think are interesting to reflect on as we think about the future of AI in healthcare. Very briefly, just to set the scene. So we're a company that's focusing on mental and neurological health, and just kind of setting the scene there. These are key societal challenges. We see them being highly prevalent. A lot of people are suffering from these conditions. Major public health issue. It's kind of the leading cause of disability worldwide. And it's very costly, specifically when in the US, mental health now is the kind of the largest expense category in healthcare spending. Now, the problem we see with mental and neurological health is, in contrast to other areas of medicine, it's still very subjective in nature. We're really relying on patient self-reports. We have a nosology that's driven by symptoms. And that creates a lot of issues. In the case of diagnostics, we see a lot of degree of underdiagnosis or late diagnosis, misdiagnosis of common and rare diseases. In treatment, we have a bit of a trial and error approach. We don't really have any good outcome data. We're not really tracking that much. And as a result, we see a limited remission with a lot of residual symptoms. And in clinical trials, where we do most of our work today, we see the problem of very low new drug approval rates. And what makes that even worse is that a lot of these drugs fail very late in the process, so twice as likely to fail in phase 3. And we see a lot of kind of differential response in patients, but we are just kind of at the beginning point of using ways to kind of target drugs for specific populations to increase those off. So what does Deliberate do as a way of solving this problem? So we're a multimodal AI company, which I'll explain in a second. But our purpose in life is to come up with more objective measures to kind of detect, predict, and monitor these indications. And the first way we're doing that is using audiovisual data. So we're focusing on the thing that makes CNS indications, neurological, psychiatric health, quite specific, which are behavioral attributes. And we're using audio-video input to kind of extract the most extensive set of biomarkers, ranging from facial expression, facial affective expression, to the way you move your head, eye movements, to also kind of speech-related elements, acoustics, speech behaviors. Now, each of those individually have already been correlated to kind of a range of indications, and depression is one of the first that we focused on. Now, the challenge, however, though, is that while they're correlated, they aren't as strongly correlated as we need them to be in order to really have a clinical meaningful impact. So what we're doing a little bit different, we're applying multimodal machine learning and actually combine all of these biomarkers. And we're the only platform currently available that's also able to incorporate other modalities of data, being neuroimaging data, blood-based kind of biomarkers. And by combining them, there are 2 kind of outputs we create. One is what we call biomarker constellation, which are typically trends diagnostic, measuring a kind of a particular symptom category of interest, or what we call AI COAs, or AI clinical outcome assessments. And those are models that directly predict outcomes for diseases that the FDA cares about. So we've developed the first model for Hamilton depression, Hamilton anxiety, which are kind of primary endpoints when the FDA is evaluating new drugs in treatment for depression and anxiety. The products we deliver are twofold for clinical trials, for biopharma companies and healthcare. So this platform is available for biopharma companies for their own biomarker and phenotyping research. Our models, the AICOAs, which are now in review with the FDA, can be used to enhance endpoint reliability in trials and reduce trials between 10 to 30% in depression trials, for instance. And then the other kind of use cases in healthcare, where we can plug into telemedicine platform and passively measure symptom severity, as well as do passive screening and diagnosis. So that's kind of what we do. And I think three things that I would want to offer to get the conversation with regards to where AI is going next in healthcare. So the key thing that we're doing is we're applying multimodal biomedical AI. And that really is kind of the new generation, we believe, of AI within healthcare. There's a great article with the famous Eric Topol as the author that came out September last year that describes this exciting area. We have this wealth of information, and kind of by combining different bits of information, we get a much richer, much more actionable insight into patients. So that's one thing that's exciting, and that's really kind of comes with a lot of technology development as well, because multimodal systems are quite different in a lot of areas than, like, say, just an image recognition model. Example of that creates to data. So what you see here is some research that we've done. On the left, you see a whole range of biomarker categories, and on the right, a whole range of psychiatric and neurological indications. You can find the interactive version on this on our website. The thing that's exciting to see, though, is that we see all of this kind of connections, all these potential biomarkers. However, a lot of them individually aren't significant, but there is a very scarce amount of research and data sets that actually allow for multimodal approaches to take place. So there really isn't much work yet being done now, and that's kind of the next revolution we expect to happen. The other point, which we talked a little bit about, kind of is deep learning versus handcrafted. One of the things that's very tricky in healthcare, which was mentioned by, I think, Mohammed just now, about like the explainability and interpretability of models. So the way we do that, I'm just going to put this up. We can do kind of Shapley analysis. We can kind of specifically identify which features power our models, which lead us to come up with specific predictions for each individual patient, as well as for the model overall. And that's essential for regulatory approval at this point. Now, deep learning is super exciting to do a lot of novel insight, but it creates the challenge of lack of interpretability. However, the other point is also around data-centric AI in that same element. So in healthcare, in many cases, we don't have a wealth of information, specifically in rare diseases. We can't throw more data at the problem. So we need to think a little bit better on how we make the best use of the data we have. Transfer learning, which Timothy mentioned earlier, is very exciting. What's interesting and what's challenging is that there aren't really medical multimodal foundation models. There are some BioGPT that's just been released by Microsoft, shows some of that within an NLP context. But where it comes to multimodal data sets, foundation models that can be used to fine tune and do transfer learning, they don't really exist within our domain yet. And the other point, the third point I wanted to raise, is around solving accuracy and reliability of data. And that's really a big problem in healthcare, both with regards to availability and the quality of input signals of data. And another point I'll mention in a second. So one problem, for instance, to highlight is EHR and mental health. So the promise of using like a Flatiron approach, where we can mine EHR data to better predict oncology trials, that doesn't really work within mental health, for instance. And the problem is that we're kind of have a whole range of indications, diagnostic criteria that are being fed into an EHR more to meet insurer or payer demands rather than anything else. And the other point I wanted to make is around clinical outcome assessments, specifically patient-reported outcomes. I'm seeing Stan come up, so I think that's my cue of wrapping it up. So I think one thing that's really exciting or kind of challenging to think about is we're dealing with a lot of errors in data, and those are not necessarily errors you can solve by just having more observations. Let me pause there. I think that the final point really is that the next stage of AI in healthcare is a lot around data and getting the data that's available and making sure that it's of good quality. Let me pause there and hand it back to you, Stan.
No, that's fantastic. And again, really appreciate your time today and explaining this to the audience, Marc. Thank you very much. And let's give a virtual round of applause to Marc from Deliberate.AI.